The hall of the celestial court shimmered like a cathedral made from starlight. Each column rose into infinity, sculpted from living crystal that pulsed faintly with the rhythm of unseen energy. The air itself hummed, not with machinery, but with the resonance of minds linked across dimensions. I stood at the center of it all, my boots echoing faintly against a floor that looked solid but felt soft, almost alive. Around me, thousands of beings watched, humanoid, but not human. Their skin varying shades of silver, indigo, and ivory, their eyes like fragments of nebulae. The scent of ozone filled the chamber. My pulse hammered so loudly that I barely noticed the distant chime announcing her arrival. When the doors of the upper dais opened, the light shifted, and I forgot how to breathe. She entered like the concept of beauty given form. The Galactic Queen of Aelthera, sovereign of the eternal dominion, whose voice could command fleets across 3 arms of the galaxy, walked toward me with measured grace, her every step trailing faint motes of gold. Her hair, pale as starlight, was braided in intricate spirals woven with crystalline threads that glowed faintly with energy. The crown she wore wasn't a symbol of rule. It was rule itself, a lattice of pure energy anchored into her neural field. When she moved, the space around her bent slightly, as though reality itself bowed. And then those eyes, cold silver with a faint warmth at their core, fixed on me, the lone human standing among empires. My throat went dry. I hadn't expected to see her again after the war. My assignment had been simple: diplomatic envoy, symbolic presence, a gesture of good faith from Earth to the Aeltheran Dominion after the armistice. But from the moment I stepped into the hall, I knew something had changed. Every alien gaze felt heavier, expectant. Argo, my translator implant, pulsed faintly at the base of my skull as it synced to the local frequency. I caught fragments of thought, disbelief, confusion, and something else. Anticipation. Then the Queen stopped a few paces away, and the entire hall fell silent. Human. Her voice echoed, resonant and crystalline, layered with harmonic tones that made it impossible to tell whether it was sound or telepathy. Step forward. My feet obeyed before my mind did. Each movement felt like walking inside a dream I wasn't supposed to have. When I reached the foot of the dais, she descended the steps herself. Something no Aeltheran ruler had done for anyone, if the diplomatic records were to be believed. The guards shifted, uncertain, their armor plates humming faintly with defensive energy. She didn't look at them. She looked only at me. "You fought in the siege of Virulon," she said. "You disobeyed direct orders to protect non-combatants, not of your own kind." Yeah, I managed. "They were civilians. I couldn't just—" "You broke your chain of command to save my people," she interrupted softly, her tone unreadable. "You understand that mercy is considered weakness among many of your species? Then maybe they're wrong," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. The faintest curve appeared at the corner of her lips. It wasn't a smile, not yet, but something close. "Perhaps," she said. "But tell me, human, do you understand what strength truly means?" Before I could answer, she turned to the assembly. The crowd parted with fluid precision, the sea of alien faces reflecting the cold gleam of her armor. She raised one hand, and the air itself vibrated. "Before all who stand here," she declared, her voice magnified not by technology but by will, "I make a bond of my choosing, the human known as Commander Daniel Rains. I name him my mate." For a moment, the universe forgot how to move. My brain didn't process the words until the hall erupted in 1,000 simultaneous gasps, voices overlapping in frequencies beyond human hearing. Argo nearly shorted out trying to translate them all. I just stood there, mouth dry, heartbeat thundering in my ears. Mate, not ally, not advisor, not diplomat. She'd used the word that, in Aeltheran culture, meant eternal bond, a sacred pairing sealed by both mind and biology. It was equivalent to marriage, but deeper, encoded into their very essence. My first coherent thought was, this has to be a mistake. The guards shifted, some visibly tense, their hands twitching toward their weapons. But she didn't look at them. Her gaze stayed locked on me. Unwavering, calm, terrifyingly certain. I tried to speak, but the words jammed in my throat. Your Majesty, I finally managed. There must be some misunderstanding. There is none, she said. You would refuse an honor decreed before the stars themselves? I'm saying I don't understand what's happening. Then listen. She stepped closer, so close I could see the faint fractal patterns pulsing beneath her skin, like circuits under glass. Your species taught us something in war, she said quietly. You bleed for what you believe in. You fight even when there is no hope. You endure where logic demands surrender. The Eltherin call such things madness. I call it courage. She tilted her head, studying me like a scientist examining something fragile. Do you think I choose lightly, human? I think, I said carefully, that whatever this is, it's bigger than me. Precisely, she said. That is why I chose you. The hall erupted again, this time in argument. High-caste advisors stepped forward, their voices sharp with alarm. Your Majesty, one said, his tone nearly panicked. This cannot stand. He is primitive. The council will never. The council exists because I allow it, she said, and the air shimmered around her. Do you question my right to bond? The advisor fell silent. The others followed. The tension in the room thickened until it felt like breathing through molten glass. I couldn't take my eyes off her. She was terrifying, radiant, and absolutely beyond comprehension. And somehow, beneath all that, I could see something I hadn't expected, a flicker of vulnerability. Why me? I whispered. She looked back at me, and this time, she smiled. Because you did not see a queen that day, she said. You saw people worth saving. And I have not forgotten. The next thing I knew, the hall's resonance shifted again. A deep tone that signified the binding ritual's initiation. A translucent field expanded between us. A sphere of soft blue light filled with floating glyphs. Argo sputtered in confusion. Warning. Cultural event unknown. Probability of permanent neural imprint. 84%. I barely had time to react before the queen extended her hand. Step forward, human, she said. And be known. I hesitated only a second. Then I stepped into the light. The field enveloped me, warm and electric, threading through every nerve. It wasn't pain, but something beyond sensation, as if the universe had decided to peel back the curtain of perception for just a moment. I saw her memories, fragments of battle, the cold isolation of command, the faces of those she'd lost. And beneath it all, a longing for something she couldn't name until she'd met me. At the same time, I felt my own life unfold for her. The dusty barracks of Mars Colony, the burning wreckage of Virilon, the endless gray corridors of warships where laughter had become a myth. When the light faded, I was on my knees, trembling. She stood over me, her expression unreadable but softer somehow. It is done, she said. Your life is bound to mine, by oath and by essence. You didn't ask, I whispered hoarsely. No, she said. I never ask. I choose. She turned, and the hall bowed as one. The ceremony was over, or maybe just beginning. Guards approached, forming a protective circle around her. But her gaze lingered on me before she finally turned away. Take him to the consort wing, she commanded. See that he is treated as one of royal blood. I wanted to protest, to demand answers, to insist this couldn't be real. But the guards' expressions made it clear there was no room for debate. As they escorted me out, I looked back one last time. She stood at the dais again, framed by light and legend, watching me go. And though she said nothing, her voice echoed in my mind, soft and unmistakable. You will understand soon. I didn't know it then, but that single choice, hers, not mine, would change the course of the entire Dominion. The corridors of the Celestial Palace were built to humble. They stretched for miles, lined with living light that pulsed like veins through the metallic walls. Every step I took seemed to echo for eternity. The guards flanking me were silent, their armor whispering with faint energy currents that shimmered with every movement. They didn't speak, didn't even glance my way, but I could feel the weight of their unease pressing against my thoughts. The Aeltheran called themselves ascended creatures of precision, of perfected biology and emotionless logic. Yet now, for the first time in their history, their queen had chosen a human consort. I could practically feel the chaos rippling through their empire, even from the way these guards avoided looking directly at me. To them, I was an anomaly, an infection in a perfect system. And worse, I'd been chosen, not earned. When the doors of the consort wing opened, a wave of warmth and scent rolled out. Flowers that glowed faintly like embers, air filtered through crystalline gardens, and music too faint to be heard, yet too perfect to ignore. The chamber beyond was vast, a blend of alien geometry and something almost human in its softness. The furniture seemed grown, not built, shaped from a material that shimmered like water but held solid beneath touch. I half expected to find her waiting for me. She wasn't. The silence pressed close. Argo, my neural implant, hummed quietly at the back of my skull. "Daniel," it said in its neutral tone, "your heart rate is elevated. Should I initiate meditation protocols?" "No," I muttered. "Just record everything." Acknowledged. Observation mode active. I dropped into one of the crystalline seats, the surface reshaping subtly to fit me. My thoughts felt like shards, jagged, disordered, looping endlessly around one question. Why me? She had called me courageous, selfless, but those words didn't explain a bond that transcended biology. She'd looked at me as if I were something she'd been searching for her whole life, and that scared me more than any weapon ever had. Hours passed before I heard the sound of footsteps again. Soft, deliberate, resonant like a melody. I stood instinctively as she entered, flanked by two attendants in silver robes who immediately bowed and withdrew, leaving us alone. The queen, Sarathia of Aelthera, stood in the golden light of her domain, her armor replaced by a flowing garment woven from threads of living metal. Her presence was overwhelming, not just in beauty but in gravity. Even the air seemed to hold its breath for her. "Do you find your quarters sufficient?" she asked, her tone unreadable. "You could have sent someone to ask," I said before I could stop myself. Her head tilted, the faintest sign of curiosity. "I did," she said. "Myself." I hesitated, then nodded. "They're comfortable. A little intimidating, maybe. Everything in this palace is designed to remind those within it who they serve," she said. "You will have to decide whether that includes you." "I didn't ask to be here," I said quietly. Her gaze softened, though her posture didn't. "Few ever do when destiny interferes." "Destiny?" I echoed, almost scoffing. "You think the universe planned this?" "The universe plans nothing," she said. "But sometimes its chaos aligns. And when it does, those who recognize it have a choice, to accept it or to deny it. And you've decided to accept it," I said. "To bind yourself to someone who barely understands your people." "You underestimate yourself," she replied, "and overestimate the difference between us." She stepped closer, and I felt my breath catch. Up close, the patterns beneath her skin pulsed faintly with light, living circuitry woven into flesh. Her eyes shimmered like liquid mercury, reflecting not just me but the entire chamber in their depths. "You think I chose you because of what you are," she said softly. "But I chose you because of what you are not. You do not seek power. You do not bow to fear. You do not see hierarchy, only lives worth saving. Even when the galaxy told you not to." "That doesn't make me special," I said. "It makes me human. And that," she said, "is exactly what my people forgot how to be." For a long moment, silence filled the space between us, heavy with things unspoken. Then she turned and gestured for me to follow. "Walk with me," she said. We moved through the inner gardens, a vast biosphere suspended inside the palace itself. Trees with silver leaves whispered in an artificial breeze, and pools of liquid light reflected constellations that weren't visible from this world. "These are the heart gardens," she said. "Every ruler of Aelthera adds something of themselves here. A memory, a fragment of energy, a dream. They are a living record of our line." They're beautiful, I said. They're dying, she replied. The resonance that sustains them fades each century. We have extended our lives, but not our purpose. She paused beside a small pool. Its surface shimmered with faint images. Scenes of war, peace, birth, loss. Do you see now why I chose you? She asked. You fight not because of command, but because you cannot bear not to. You create meaning where none exists. My people need that reminder. So this is about politics? I asked. A symbol. It began that way, she admitted. But symbols have power. They become truths when believed deeply enough. She turned to face me fully. Tell me, Daniel, when you looked upon me during the siege, what did you see? I hesitated. The memory surfaced unbidden. Her command ship burning, the orbital debris raining like fire, and her, standing amidst it all with defiance carved into her every motion. I saw someone who refused to fall, I said, even when everything else did. She studied me for a long time, and then she smiled, a real human smile that cracked the armor of her composure. You see why I had to find you. Before I could answer, the air trembled. A faint chime echoed through the halls, deeper, sharper than before. Sarathia's expression changed instantly. They move sooner than expected, she murmured. Who? I asked. The Council of Dominion, she said. They convene to challenge my bond. They believe your existence here weakens my rule. I can't say they're wrong, I said. I don't exactly blend in. No, she said. You don't. And that is your greatest weapon. She turned sharply and began walking back toward the throne hall. Come. They must see that my choice stands. The chamber was filled when we arrived. A storm of tension and ceremonial precision. 12 counselors, each ancient enough to have witnessed the rise of civilizations, stood in a circle of silver thrones that hummed with telepathic energy. Their forms shimmered slightly, their physical presence enhanced by projection from distant worlds. At their center, Sarathia took her place, radiant and unyielding. I stood beside her, painfully aware of every pair of alien eyes burning holes through me. The eldest counselor spoke first, his voice like sand on glass. Your Majesty, this union violates the genetic sanctity of our kind. It disrupts the order that binds the dominion. Order is not balance, Sarathia replied. It is stagnation wearing the mask of harmony. You speak like a philosopher, not a queen, another hissed. You risk everything for an experiment of emotion. Emotion built your empire, she said coldly. It was fear, and fear is still your master. They began to argue, voices rising, overlapping in telepathic discord. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt their emotion. Disgust, fear, outrage. It built like a physical force in the air until I thought it might crush me. Then I heard Sarathia's voice, clear and sharp. Enough. The room froze. You claim purity as your defense, she said. But purity is the death of growth. We have survived millennia not by isolation, but by adaptation. Humanity has achieved in centuries what we forgot in eons, the courage to begin again. One of the counselors sneered. And this human, what does he offer, Majesty? Flesh? Sentiment? Sarathia's voice softened, but it carried like thunder. He offers choice. She turned toward me. Speak, Daniel, reigns of earth. They would know the worth of what you are. My throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to stay silent. But her gaze steadied me, a silent promise that whatever I said would matter. I stepped forward. I don't know your politics, I began. I don't understand your rituals or your history. But I know this, I've seen empires fall because they stopped listening to their people. Because they stopped remembering why they existed. You call me primitive, maybe I am. But humanity survived because we never stopped fighting for something better, even when it seemed impossible. Maybe that's why she chose me. Maybe she's trying to remind you what it means to feel. Silence followed, long, heavy, dangerous. Then, without warning, the counselor on the far right rose. Enough sentiment, he said. You would bind yourself to a lesser creature? Then let the ritual decide. Let him prove his worth. A ripple went through the chamber. Interest, fear, excitement. Sarathia's expression darkened. The trial of resonance is forbidden, she said sharply. It was abolished for good reason. Then refuse, the counselor said, his voice dripping with challenge, and reveal to all that your bond is built on weakness. Her jaw tightened. Then she looked at me, and I saw the decision form in her eyes. No, she said. He will face it. I opened my mouth to protest, but her voice reached me silently, through the bond that still hummed faintly from the ceremony. Trust me. And for reasons I couldn't name, I did. The chamber where they prepared the trial of resonance was carved into the heart of the Eltheran palace. Deep beneath the throne hall, where the walls themselves seemed to breathe with ancient power. I could feel the hum before I saw it. A low vibration that sank into bone. A pulse that wasn't mechanical but alive, like the slow heartbeat of a god sleeping just below. The guards who escorted us said nothing, their faces as expressionless as the silver masks they wore. Every step we took echoed in endless repetition, swallowed by the hum of the core. The air smelled faintly metallic, like ozone before a storm. When the final gate opened, I stepped into a vast amphitheater of light and shadow. In the center, suspended above a pit of swirling luminescence, hung a crystalline ring the size of a starship. Energy cascaded through it in translucent ribbons, folding and unfolding into impossible geometries. I didn't need Argo to tell me this was older than the Dominion itself. The trial of resonance, Sarathia said beside me, her voice soft but heavy with memory, a relic from before recorded time, when our kind still sought unity through struggle rather than obedience. I turned toward her. She wasn't wearing her crown now, only the black and silver of ceremonial armor, its plates shaped like flowing metal waves. Without the crown's radiance, she seemed almost mortal. What happens in this trial? I asked. Resonance is connection, she said. Mind to mind, soul to soul. It strips away illusion. You will stand before the core and reveal what you are. If you are found hollow, it will consume you. And if I'm not hollow, then it will know you, she said. As I do. That's comforting, I muttered. She smiled faintly. It was never meant to be comforting. The council watched from the upper balconies, their forms outlined in cold blue light. Their expressions were distant, clinical, like surgeons observing an experiment. When the chamber lights dimmed, the hum deepened, vibrating the very air. Step into the circle, Sarathia said. It must know both of us. You're doing this too? I asked. It is our bond they question, she said. I will not have you stand alone. The way she said it, calm, certain, final, silenced every protest that formed in my mind. Together, we stepped into the circle. The air shifted instantly, thickening with invisible force. The ring above us flared, and light cascaded down in a waterfall of energy, surrounding us completely. My first thought was that I was falling. Then, I realized there was no ground at all, only a vast ocean of golden light stretching into infinity. Sarathia was beside me, but her form shimmered, like she was made of threads of memory. Do not fight it, her voice echoed across the void. Let it see you. Then the visions began. I saw Earth as I remembered it, cracked and divided, blue oceans turned dull gray by orbital dust, cities rebuilt on the ruins of the last wars. I saw myself as a child, staring at the stars through a cracked window, dreaming of what might be beyond. I saw Mars, the trenches, the burning wreckage of the Virilon campaign, the faces of soldiers who'd never made it back. Pain bled through everything. Guilt, loss, duty, all the things I'd carried but never spoken. Then it shifted and I saw her, not as the queen but as Sarathia before the crown. Young, fearless, leading armies not because she wanted to rule, but because no one else dared. I saw her standing over the bodies of her fallen, tears burning silver against her skin. I saw her binding herself to the throne because someone had to. And beneath it all, I saw the loneliness that followed her through every victory, the isolation that came with perfection. The light pulsed faster, the visions merging, my war, her reign, my defiance, her command. Two lives, two paths, converging until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Then the voice came, not hers, but the core itself, ancient and deep. You are not of her kind. You are chaos among order. Why should you remain? I don't know, I said aloud. Maybe because chaos reminds order what it's fighting for. The light around me flared, testing, searing through every layer of thought. Pain ripped through me, not physical but something deeper, like my soul being peeled apart. I saw every choice I'd ever made, every failure, every life I hadn't saved. It wanted to see if I broke. I almost did. But then Sarathia's hand found mine. Her presence steadied the storm. Through the link, I felt her strength. Not dominance, but a steady flame that refused to die. He does not yield, she told the core. He endures. The light twisted again, focusing now on her. You risk your throne, your people, all you are for this mortal? Her voice was steady. I risk nothing. I choose. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then the core screamed, a sound like a dying star collapsing inward, and the world exploded in light. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the chamber, gasping for air. The floor beneath me was cracked, glowing faintly from residual energy. The council's voices overlapped in alarm and awe. Sarathia knelt beside me, her breathing ragged, strands of her braid undone, sweat glistening like liquid silver along her skin. You're alive, she whispered. Barely, I managed. What about? The ring above us still pulsed faintly, but its light had changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It glowed with warmth, gold and human. The resonance field was still connected. I realized it was tuned not to her alone, but to us both. The eldest counselor rose, his expression unreadable. The core has spoken, he said. The resonance recognizes their bond. The queen's choice stands. Murmurs swept through the hall. Disbelief, fear, reverence. Sarathia stood, her hand still gripping mine, her armor flickering with residual energy. Then this council is dismissed, she said. From this day forward, humanity stands under the protection of Aelthera. The counselors bowed reluctantly and vanished one by one, their holographic projections fading into nothing. When the last of them was gone, the queen turned to me. You are pale, she said. I'd say I earned it, I replied. You did more than that, she said. You survived what few ever have. The guards approached, bowing low. For the first time since I'd arrived, their gestures weren't forced. One extended a hand, not to restrain me, but to help me stand. Something had shifted. The unthinkable had become law. Later, in her private chambers, Sarathia sat before a massive window that overlooked the city below. The lights of Aelthera stretched for miles, towers of luminous stone and silver mist rising into a sky filled with drifting orbs. I entered quietly, unsure whether I was still supposed to bow. She turned before I could decide. You don't need to kneel, she said. Not anymore. I don't even know what I am now, I said. Envoy, consort, political experiment. She smiled faintly. You are proof that the stars can still surprise us. I walked closer, drawn despite myself. You took a hell of a risk, I said. If that trial had gone wrong. It didn't, she interrupted. Because you were there. I met her gaze, and for the first time it didn't feel like staring into divinity. Felt human, fragile, imperfect, real. You know, I said, on Earth, when someone saves your life, you usually just buy them a drink. A drink? She repeated, the word foreign on her tongue. I could have one prepared. I laughed despite myself. That's not what I meant. She tilted her head, studying me the way she had in the throne hall. Then show me, she said. It was such a simple sentence, yet it carried the weight of an empire. For the first time in centuries, the Queen of Aelthera was asking to learn something, not to command, not to test, but to understand. So, in a palace built by perfection, among beings who thought themselves beyond emotion, I taught her the smallest, most human of things. How to sit beside someone in silence. We said nothing for a long time, only watched the city breathe beneath us. And in that moment, I realized that maybe this wasn't just her choosing me. Maybe it was the universe choosing both of us. The following days blurred into something strange and quiet, like the aftermath of a storm that had forgotten how to end. The palace no longer treated me like an intruder. The guards bowed instead of glaring, and the servants, if that was the right word for beings of living light, greeted me with something close to curiosity. My quarters expanded overnight, connected by transparent corridors that overlooked the city's spires, their glass veins glowing with the pulse of Aeltheran energy. Still, even as luxury surrounded me, the weight of what had happened pressed heavier by the hour. The galaxy's most powerful monarch had defied her own counsel and bound her essence to mine. The trial had sealed our link, and every moment since, I felt her presence like a heartbeat against my thoughts. Distant but constant, a thread of light woven through the dark. But peace never lasted long in places built on fear. I learned that soon enough when Argo interrupted my morning with a sharp tone that carried urgency I'd never heard before. "Daniel," it said, "long-range intercept, unauthorized transmission within the palace network. It originates from the council chambers." I frowned, glancing at the faint shimmer that represented the AI in my retinal overlay. "Play it." The air rippled, and a voice, cold, formal, ancient, spoke in Aeltheran. Argo translated instantly. "The Queen's union threatens the Dominion's purity. She must be contained before her corruption spreads. The human will be neutralized discreetly." My stomach turned. "They're going to kill me," I said quietly. "And dethrone her if they can," Argo added. I didn't have time to process before the doors hissed open and Sarathia entered, flanked by two of her personal guard. Her expression was calm, but I could feel the tension rippling beneath the bond. "You heard it," she said. "It wasn't a question. They move faster than expected." "You knew this was coming?" I asked. "I knew they would resist," she replied. "But not that they would dare act while the core still echoes with your name. Then we need to do something." She turned toward the window, her reflection caught in the glass, regal, radiant, yet heavy with a quiet sorrow. "There will be no negotiation," she said. "They will strike through the Ascendant Order, zealots sworn to preserve what they call purity. You will not fight them." "The hell I won't," I said. "They want me dead. I'm not just going to sit here." Her eyes flicked to mine, silver fire beneath a calm mask. "If you die, they win. If I fight for you, they win. But if we stand together..." Her voice softened, almost reverent. "Then even the stars must yield." Before I could answer, the bond pulsed, sharp and bright, like lightning through nerves. I felt her anger, her fear, her love for her people all tangled together. It wasn't like thought. It was sensation, raw and vivid. The trial had fused something between us that went deeper than blood. I didn't just know her emotions. I felt them bleed into my own. "You're afraid," I said quietly. She didn't deny it. "They do not fear me," she said. "They fear what I become beside you." An explosion tore through the lower levels of the palace before I could reply. The sound wasn't physical at first. It was a resonance, a shockwave of harmonic energy that rattled every bone in my body. Argo's voice spiked. "Multiple breaches detected. Ascendant signatures confirmed. You need to evacuate." "No," Sarathia said. "We go to them." The corridors erupted in light and sound as we moved. The guards formed a perimeter, their armor plates shifting to full combat resonance, weapons unfolding from their arms like living extensions. I followed Sarathia through the smoke, my pulse sinking to the rhythm of her command. She didn't bark orders. She sang them, her voice modulating across frequencies that carried through walls and minds alike. Soldiers responded instantly, their movements synchronized with an elegance that was terrifying to witness. When the first wave of attackers broke through the southern atrium, I understood why she needed me. They weren't like her soldiers. Their armor was jagged, blackened, pulsing with unstable light. Their faces were hidden behind mirrored helms that distorted their features into insect-like masks. The moment they saw me, every weapon turned in my direction. Sarathia moved before I could think. A surge of energy burst from her hand, rippling across the marble floor in a wave of molten gold. The attackers were lifted off their feet, suspended midair as their own armor disintegrated. "They aim for you," she said, her voice like thunder. "Stay behind me." "I'm not hiding," I said, gripping the sidearm they'd issued me. A sleek alien weapon that hummed like a caged storm. "Then fight," she said, and unleashed the storm. What followed felt like stepping into the heart of creation itself. Energy clashed against energy, light against shadow, each impact bending the air. Her movements were poetry, every strike deliberate, every defense graceful. I moved in her wake, covering flanks, firing at anything that tried to circle behind. The bond between us pulsed with perfect rhythm. I could sense where she would move before she did, and she responded to my instincts like they were her own. It wasn't just battle, it was unity made flesh. When the last of the attackers fell, the silence that followed was deafening. Smoke curled upward in spirals of blue and gold. Sarathia stood amidst the ruin, her armor cracked but unbroken, her eyes glowing like twin suns. "They will not stop," she said. "They believe the Dominion itself will collapse if I continue this bond. Then we make sure it doesn't," I said. "They can't fight both of us forever." She turned toward me, expression unreadable. "You speak as if you are one of my generals." "Maybe I am," I said. "You're my queen, aren't you?" For the first time since I'd met her, she laughed. Quiet and real, like music breaking through grief. "You speak of allegiance," she said. "But what we have is far older than that." Hours later, the palace had been sealed. The council fled to their sanctuaries, but the ascendants kept coming. Small, coordinated strikes meant to test defenses and spread panic. I found Sarathia in the throne chamber, alone, standing before the holographic map of the Dominion. Entire sectors pulsed red. "They're spreading rebellion," she said. "Not just here, across the colonies. Every faction that ever questioned my reign rises now. And they're using us as the excuse," I said. "To them, it's not about politics. It's about fear." "Fear," she repeated, "is the first language the galaxy ever learned." She turned toward me, the faintest crack showing in her composure. "You would not understand what it means to be worshipped, Daniel. To be obeyed by all and loved by none. For ages, I have ruled by law. Now I am asked to rule by faith. And faith cannot be forced." I stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time to stop ruling." Her eyes widened slightly, not in offense but in surprise. "And do what instead?" "Lead," I said simply. "There's a difference." The silence between us stretched, alive with something unspoken. She reached up slowly, unclasping her crown. The moment it left her head, the light in the room dimmed, as if the entire palace had taken a breath. "You do not understand what this means," she said. "The crown is not metal. It is the conduit of our kind. It binds me to the Dominion. Then let it bind you to something better," I said. Her gaze met mine, and for a moment the queen disappeared. What remained was Sarathia, the woman who'd seen her empire crumble and still dared to love a human. "If I do this," she said softly, "there is no return." "Then don't," I whispered. "Move forward instead." Without another word, she placed the crown on the floor. It pulsed once, a heartbeat of light, then shattered into dust. The sound echoed like the death of an era. Alarms blared across the palace, the automated systems registering the loss of the monarch's neural link. Argo's voice crackled. "Warning. Throne link collapse detected. Power grid destabilizing. You need to leave." But Sarathia only smiled faintly, her eyes filled with something fierce and free. "No," she said. "We stay." The floor beneath us trembled as the palace began to shift, its living architecture reacting to the sudden void in its network. Energy flares burst across the horizon, the Dominion's fleets recalibrating to a universe without its queen. I reached for her hand instinctively, and the bond between us flared, no longer controlled by ceremony, no longer sanctioned by the core. Pure, unfiltered resonance. Two beings, human and Aeltheran, merging not through ritual but through choice. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. Now they will see what unity truly means. Outside, the city shone brighter than it ever had before. Not from the light of dominion, but from the light of something new being born from its ashes. And for the first time since the war, the stars above Aelthera burned not in cold perfection but in warmth. The kind that came from imperfection, the kind that came from humanity. The night that followed wasn't really night at all. The Aeltheran sky had no true darkness, only layers of silver clouds that reflected the energy from their orbiting cities. Yet something had changed. The light felt softer, more human somehow. The palace no longer glowed with the artificial rhythm of the Dominion's network. It pulsed faintly with the slower heartbeat of organic life. The bond between us had become its new core, a living pulse that connected every thread of this world to something raw and uncertain. I stood with Sarathia on the upper terrace where the shattered fragments of her crown still glimmered faintly across the marble floor. Her hair moved like liquid metal in the wind, her eyes reflecting constellations that had been hidden for centuries. Below, the city of Aelthera had gone silent, waiting for what came next. I've never seen them so quiet, I said. They're listening, she replied. They have forgotten how. She looked down at the streets below where thousands of her people had gathered, their luminous forms flickering like stars reborn. They don't understand what has happened, she said softly. Their queen no longer commands. Their order no longer exists. And yet, the sky still holds. Maybe that's the point, I said. Maybe they need to see that it doesn't fall apart without control. She smiled faintly, spoken like someone who knew. The air between us carried a strange peace. We had fought, bled, defied an empire, and somehow we were still standing. But beneath the calm, I could feel something vast and shifting through the bond. It wasn't fear. It was change. The palace's living walls whispered faintly as new pathways formed, reorganizing themselves in response to her severed link. Argo's voice echoed in my skull, quieter now, almost reverent. Daniel, the neural lattice of the Dominion network is fracturing, but something is reassembling. The signal pattern matches your resonance frequency. Mine? I asked. Yours and hers, Argo corrected. It's merging into a hybrid construct, neither human nor Aeltheran. Sarathia turned toward me, as though hearing the same echo through our bond. Do you feel it? She asked. Yeah, I said. It's like the whole world's breathing with us. Then the core accepted what the council could not, she said. It always sought balance. Perhaps it has found it. Before I could respond, the horizon erupted with streaks of silver fire. Dozens of Dominion warships broke through the atmosphere, their engines leaving burning trails across the clouds. My instincts screamed danger, but Sarathia didn't flinch. They come not for war, she said quietly. They come to see if the legend lives. Legend. A queen who broke her crown for love. A human who endured the core. Stories spread faster than rebellion. The first ship descended, its hull reflecting the fractured light of the dawn. When it landed, the shockwave rolled through the terrace, scattering the fragments of her crown into the air like ash. From its ramp emerged the High Guard, a phalanx of silver-armored soldiers who had once answered only to the council. They formed ranks in perfect silence. Their commander, taller than the rest, stepped forward and knelt before Sarathia. Your Majesty, he said, the council is gone. The Ascendant Order has fallen. What remains of the Dominion seeks your command. Sarathia stood motionless for a heartbeat, the wind pulling strands of her hair across her face. Then she said quietly, there will be no command. The commander looked up, confusion flickering through his metallic eyes. Majesty, you will not kneel to me, she said. You will kneel to yourselves. The Dominion as you knew it is over. We build anew, together as equals. The words rippled outward like a wave of fire. The soldiers glanced at each other, uncertain. A few began to rise, their armor dimming as the control signals embedded in their systems faded. One by one, they stood not in defiance but in realization. The hierarchy that had ruled them for millennia had vanished. All that remained was choice, and choice, I realized, was freedom. The commander bowed his head once more. Then tell us where to begin. Sarathia looked at me then, her gaze deep and bright. Ask him, she said. The commander turned, studying me with alien precision. You carry the Queen's bond, he said, and the will of the core. Speak, human. I swallowed hard, feeling every eye on me. Start small, I said. Stop thinking in galaxies. Think in people. Feed them, heal them, let them choose their own way to live. No more decrees, no more purity, just life. The silence that followed felt alive. Then the commander nodded. It shall be done. As the soldiers departed, Sarathia turned back toward the horizon, where the rising sun painted the city in soft hues of gold. They will build, she said, but they will stumble. Good, I said. Means they're learning. She looked at me then, her smile gentle but tired. You sound like someone who has led before. No, I said. Just someone who's failed enough times to know what not to do. She laughed softly. The sound carried warmth that reached deeper than the bond itself. Failure, she said, is the one thing my people have never been allowed. Perhaps that is why we needed you. We walked through the ruined halls together as the palace adjusted to the new world being born around it. The architecture shifted like a living creature shedding old skin. Walls bending into organic shapes, corridors reshaping into open spaces filled with light. Everywhere we went, the citizens watched us, not as ruler and subject, but as something else entirely. For the first time, I saw their faces unmasked by formality. Fear had faded, replaced by something uncertain yet hopeful. Later, when the day's first light reached the upper spires, Sarathia brought me to the heart gardens again. The once fading trees now shimmered with renewed color, their silver leaves streaked with veins of green. The pools of memory that had shown only sorrow now reflected scenes of laughter and rebuilding. The core's energy has changed them, she said. They draw from the resonance now. From us. You're saying this, us. It's keeping your world alive? No, she said. I am saying it's teaching my world to live. We stood there for what felt like hours. The air filled with the soft hum of new life. The weight of the past days began to ease. For the first time since I'd arrived, I wasn't thinking about survival or duty. I was just here, alive in a place that shouldn't have accepted me, beside someone who shouldn't have chosen me. When she turned to me, her expression held something unguarded. You never asked what the bond means for you, she said. I figured it was one of those things better not to know, I said. Tell me anyway. She took my hand, her touch light but electric. Your lifespan will extend, she said. Your body will change slowly, shaped by the resonance between us. You will see centuries pass. But the cost is this: when I die, you will too. I stared at her, the enormity of it settling like gravity. You mean I'm tied to you? Completely? You already were, she said softly. From the moment you stepped into the light. For a long moment I couldn't speak. Then I said, guess I'd better make those centuries count. She smiled, a rare, unguarded smile that felt like sunrise breaking through the ruins of a long night. You already have, she said. The years that followed became legend. The Dominion transformed not through conquest, but through compassion. Planets once enslaved by hierarchy began to govern themselves. Trade replaced tribute. The old war fleets became peace wardens, carrying aid instead of fear. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive, became the new bridge between species, a reminder that strength was not control but connection. And at the heart of it all, the Queen and the human stood together, not as ruler and consort, but as equals bound by choice. But even legends fade into stories, and stories into myth. The centuries passed like chapters in a dream. The resonance kept us young, but time always finds its way in. When Sarathia's light began to dim, she called me to the same terrace where it had all begun. The city below was no longer silent. It sang, alive with the pulse of countless lives rebuilt. "It is time," she said. "The bond will fade soon." "Then we fade together," I said. She reached up, her fingers tracing the lines on my face that hadn't aged in centuries. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Not for a second," I said. "You? Never," she whispered. The dawn rose again, flooding the terrace with light. The world below glowed with new color, its people free at last. The bond pulsed one final time, a heartbeat shared across the universe. And then, gently, it let go. The last thing I saw before everything dissolved into warmth was her smile. When the historians of the new era spoke of us, they didn't call it the reign of the Dominion. They called it the age of the two suns. For in those years, the galaxy had been lit by two hearts that burned as one.